Hey there, guys. Long time no see. I know I haven't posted a long format video for quite a while for a couple reasons. I'm working on getting an editor because editing is the bane of my existence. I can do it, but I don't love doing it. So working on that right now. Also just have been doing so much with motivational speaking and comedy events. So if you've been keeping up with my Instagram, you might have seen some of that going on. I do plan on posting more of that here. I've just not had a ton of time to get caught up. But I do want to be getting to a schedule where I'm posting here long format videos at least once, twice a week. Now, if you've been following me for a long time, you know that I say these things, and I'm really working on getting to that point, but give me time, all right? I will get there. It's just going to take me a little time. I thought one of the ways that I could ensure that I was posting more frequently on here is to go back and redo some of my schizophrenic story times from TikTok. For those of you who are following me here but have never seen my TikTok, one of the things that made my videos go viral were my schizophrenic story times, and it is exactly what it sounds like. I just tell a story about an instance I've had as an individual with schizophrenia, either about a hallucination, a delusion, or paranoia, some sort of schizophrenia symptom, and people were really connecting with that. They liked the vulnerability. They liked that they could have a little insight into my life because although I post me having symptoms frequently, it's hard to tell unless you're me and you're inside my brain what's going on. So today I'm going to start with the first schizophrenic story time that went viral on TikTok. I'll play a short clip for you and then I'll get into the more in-depth version of that story. Hey guys, I got a new segment I'm going to call Schizophrenic Story Time Part 1. So this story happened when I was trying to return to college after I had already been diagnosed and I was already receiving medication. So this was the part of my life where I was already doing all of the work. I was getting the treatment I needed. I was finally sober and I was working full time. And on top of this, I thought, why not go back to school? And I've attempted to go back to school several times. Admittedly, this time was probably a little too early for me to be trying to go back. One of the exciting announcements I have on top of all the other stuff I'm doing is that I was recently accepted to return to this college, the same exact college where I had my psychotic break and where this schizophrenic story time takes place, but I'll be returning as a human services student, and I'm super excited about that, and I'm going to talk more about that in another video I'm working on, actually. But because I get way too distracted too easily, let's get back to the story. So at this time, I was doing pretty poorly in school, and I was trying to get caught back up. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to the library. Keep in mind, I was having hallucinations. I was not doing well mentally, and I was really trying to power through, get things back in order. And so I was sitting in the library, and I was really overwhelmed. I'm trying to get things done and caught up. I was falling behind in my classes again after having already flunked out once before, and I felt really defeated because, medication was starting to work for me, so I had some clarity. And to this day, I still do have auditory and visual hallucinations, and they're as real to me as any other person in the room. And so I'm sitting there, I'm trying to figure all of this out. I'm trying to work really hard to rebuild my life and go back to school. And this gentleman comes over and asks to sit down with me. I'm an overly nice person, sometimes to a fault. I don't know when to say no. I don't know when to separate myself from people. Even when I know I should be working on something else, I'm an extrovert at heart. I love people. And so I told him he could sit with me, and he was super nice. He was asking me about my schoolwork, my classes, and admittedly, we got to having a really good conversation, and we were laughing and we were talking, and suddenly the librarian came up to me. I said in the TikTok that she was 100 years old. A little librarian came up. Couldn't have been a day younger than 103 years old. She was very old. She was a very old lady. And the reason I remember her so vividly is because she came up to me with such a scared look in her eye. Like she didn't want to come over and talk to me. Like she was afraid of me. And I'll never forget the look on her face. It's one of the reasons I remember this story, even though I was hallucinating and delusional at the time. But she came up to me and she politely told me that if I was going to keep making noise and being a disturbance, that I was going to have to leave. And I was super confused in this moment because I didn't understand why she didn't ask the other person to leave. He was making just as much noise as me. He was laughing just as hard. And it was in that moment that I realized that no one was there with me. And I had been talking to myself in the library for over 30 minutes, in a library full of people. And as well as I can recall her face, I remember the faces of the people at the other tables. I remember the embarrassment that came over me, the frustration, the sadness. It's one of the reasons that I always tell this story, is because it's one of the most vivid memories I have of my hallucinations. A lot of the times these memories are really difficult to recall. It's really hard to remember all the small aspects because of the effect that delusions have on the brain. This is one that always stuck with me. And I remember leaving the library, and I was so frustrated because I knew I wasn't going to pass my classes. I knew that I was not doing well, and I was frustrated because I wanted to be doing so much better. I didn't have the right meds yet, and no matter how hard I was working, it felt like I was getting nowhere. This is one of the times where, looking back, I realize I continue advocacy because of this, because of how scared and alone I felt in that moment. People always ask me what the guy looked like, and I tell everyone he looked like any other student at the school. He was a guy with no facial hair, wearing a plain hoodie. If 3 other people would have sat down at the table with me and he also sat down, he would have looked like anyone else. I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. I also know in the comments on TikTok of this video, a lot of people were upset with the librarian. I felt like she could have handled it differently, but I don't necessarily think she could have handled it better, because I was being a disruption. She approached me very nicely. She did seem concerned for me. And I think in that moment, she just realized that maybe the library wasn't the right place for me to be at that moment. It also goes to show how we can continue to educate people about schizophrenia and how to help someone having a crisis like that. Because if you've never interacted with someone with schizophrenia, if you don't have a friend or loved one with schizophrenia, how would you react? What would you do in that moment? No training. We live in a small area, so I bet she's never met anyone with schizophrenia. And so a lot of comments were just like, they didn't like how she handled it or whatever. And I honestly don't know that I would have done better had I not known how to interact with someone with schizophrenia. So I think one of the things I always talk about extensively in this story is her face when she walked up, though, because I don't think she was trying to make a face. I don't think she was trying to look afraid. I think that was her genuine reaction. She didn't know what was going on. She didn't know how to react. And so that was her genuine reaction. And I think that's why it sticks with me, is because I know that she was scared. And I didn't understand because I never felt like a threat. If anything, I was scared every single time I had symptoms. Every time I had a hallucination in public, I was scared. I was embarrassed. I didn't know what to do. At first, I would get so upset about how people reacted around me, and I realized that I didn't even know how I wanted people to react. I didn't know if I wanted them to reassure me that my hallucinations weren't there. I didn't know if I wanted them to play along in the moment just to get me through. It wasn't until years after my diagnosis and treatment that I realized what my wife does now is just help distract me from my hallucinations and try to get my attention away from them in hopes that, I can get to a safe place or get back home and feel secure before I recognize that I'm having symptoms. A lot of the schizophrenic story times I do are about me having symptoms in public, specifically me having hallucinations, both auditory and visual. I know that this was so highly requested from people that follow me that you guys wanted to see schizophrenic story times. So if you enjoyed this one or you want to hear more, please leave comments down below. Hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe and set up alerts, because I'm planning on doing these every single week, on top of some of the other videos I want to do about certain topics regarding schizophrenia, reaction videos, and a whole lot more. I appreciate everyone's patience while I'm doing my speaking and my advocacy and my comedy. And I know that I haven't been able to be on here as much as I would like, but we're going to work on changing that, including doing more live videos on here, more live Q&As. So, and just a reminder, I do still have all of the schizophrenia shirts. This one says lend your voices to schizophrenia awareness. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching the video. And like I said, leave any questions or comments down below.